The days after the broken staff incident were strange and quiet. Katie expected to be expelled from the academy immediately. She packed her bags and waited for someone to come and escort her to a transport ship, but nobody came. Instead, classes continued as normal, except that Vexthul was nowhere to be seen. Other students avoided Katie in the hallways. When she sat down for meals, entire tables would get up and move away. She could not blame them. She had broken something sacred and made their respected instructor look foolish in front of the entire academy. On the third day, Katie decided to find Vexthul and apologize properly. She searched the academy until she found him in a small garden behind the library. He was sitting on a stone bench, staring at the pieces of his broken staff, which were laid out on a cloth in front of him. "Mind if I sit down?" Katie asked. Vexthul looked up at her with tired eyes. "You are supposed to be in academic classes. I've been kicked out of most of them. Apparently, questioning traditional tactics is disruptive to the learning environment. Traditional tactics have served the galaxy well for centuries." "I know. You've mentioned that a few times." They sat in silence for a while. Katie looked at the broken pieces of the staff. In the daylight, she could see just how beautiful and intricate the carving was. Every inch was covered with tiny symbols and patterns that must have taken years to create. "I really am sorry," she said finally. "I know this meant a lot to you. It meant everything to me. This staff connected me to every instructor who came before. It represented the unbroken chain of military excellence that built our civilization. And I broke it. You broke it." Vexthul picked up one of the pieces and turned it over in his hands. "Do you know what the hardest part is? That it can't be fixed? No, the hardest part is that I understand why it broke." Katie looked at him in surprise. "You do?" "I have been thinking about our conversations, about human military history, about the way your species approaches combat and survival." He set the piece of wood back down on the cloth. "Your methods work. They are effective. They keep soldiers alive and complete missions. But they're not traditional. No, they are not traditional. They are practical." Katie was not sure what to say to that. She had expected anger or disappointment, not thoughtful analysis. "I have been reading about Earth," Vexthul continued, "about the challenges your species faced during evolution, the predators you had to fight, the environments you had to survive, the wars you fought against each other when you ran out of external threats. It wasn't that bad. Humans are pretty adaptable. Katie, your planet has creatures that hunt for sport. You have weather that can kill you in minutes. You have geological events that can destroy entire continents. And somehow not only did humans survive all of this, you thrived enough to reach the stars." "We got lucky sometimes." Vexthul laughed, which was the first time Katie had heard him make that sound. "Lucky? Your species turned one of the most hostile planets in the galaxy into a garden world. You developed technology that surpassed most galactic civilizations despite having no contact with other species. You created military doctrines that prioritize effectiveness over appearance." "When you put it like that, it sounds pretty good." "It is extraordinary. And I have been trying to force you to abandon everything that made your species successful because it does not match our traditions." Katie picked up another piece of the broken staff. "Your traditions aren't bad, though. They've kept peace in the galaxy for a long time. Peace between civilized species who evolved on gentle worlds. But what happens when that peace is threatened? By something that doesn't follow our rules? What happens when we face an enemy that doesn't care about honor or proper combat techniques? You adapt. You learn. You do whatever works. Like humans do. Like humans do." Vexthul stood up and began pacing around the garden. I have been thinking about a new kind of training program, one that combines galactic military tradition with human tactical innovation. Students would learn both approaches and understand when to use each one. That sounds interesting, but would the Academy approve something like that? The Academy will approve anything that produces better warriors. And after seeing you break an unbreakable staff with a basic disarming technique, I think everyone realizes that our current methods have some limitations. Katie set down the piece of wood she had been holding. So I'm not being expelled? Expelled? Katie, you are going to be the Academy's first cross-cultural tactical instructor. I don't know anything about teaching. You know about surviving impossible situations. You know about adapting to new challenges. You know about completing missions with minimum casualties. Vexthul stopped pacing and looked at her. Those are the most important things any military instructor can teach. What about the staff, though? What about all the tradition and authority it represented? Vexthul picked up the largest piece of the broken wood. I have been thinking about that, too. This staff represented an unbroken chain of tradition, but maybe unbroken chains become brittle over time. Maybe they need to be strengthened with new ideas. So you're going to throw away 300 years of tradition? No. I am going to build on 300 years of tradition. The staff will be repaired, but it will be reinforced with human metallurgy. It will be stronger than before. It will represent both the wisdom of the past and the innovation of the future. Katie smiled. A hybrid approach. A hybrid approach. Galactic wisdom and human adaptability working together. Over the following months, Katie and Vexthul developed the new training program together. Students learned traditional combat forms, alongside practical fighting techniques. They studied military history from dozens of species, including the chaotic and brutal conflicts that shaped human development. The other instructors were skeptical at first, but the results spoke for themselves. Students who completed the hybrid program were more adaptable, more creative, and more effective in complex situations. They retained the discipline and honor of galactic military tradition while gaining the practical skills that kept human soldiers alive. The repaired staff became a symbol of this new approach. The original heartwood was carefully joined back together and reinforced with human steel alloys. The ceremonial metals were replaced with functional materials that could withstand actual combat stress. It was still beautiful and traditional, but now it was also practical and strong. Katie found that she enjoyed teaching more than she had expected. Helping young warriors from different species learn to think outside their traditional boundaries was rewarding work. She also learned a great deal from her students about different approaches to leadership, teamwork, and problem-solving. Vexthul became more than just a colleague. He became a friend and mentor who helped Katie understand the deeper purposes behind galactic military traditions. She learned that honor and effectiveness were not mutually exclusive. They could work together when properly balanced. The Academy's reputation grew as word spread about the innovative training program. Other military institutions began sending observers to study the hybrid methods. Some traditional instructors remained skeptical, but even they had to admit that the graduates were exceptionally well prepared for the challenges of modern warfare. Years later, when Katie received her own ceremonial staff as a fully recognized instructor, it was made using the same hybrid design as Vexthul's repaired weapon. Traditional heartwood from Catheria reinforced with human steel. Ancient symbols carved alongside new patterns that represented the fusion of different military traditions. Do you think it will break? Vexathul asked during the ceremony, where Katie officially became a cross-cultural tactical instructor. Katie tested the weight and balance of her new staff. It felt solid and strong, but also flexible enough to bend rather than snap under pressure. I hope not, she said. But if it does, we'll build it back stronger. Like everything else we have learned to do here. Like everything else. The Academy's new motto, carved in stone above the entrance to the combat training facility, reflected this philosophy. In Galactic Standard script, it read, "Honor the past, adapt for the future." Below that, in smaller letters, was a translation into dozens of different languages, including English. The circle of correction still existed, but it was used differently now. Instead of proving the superiority of traditional methods, it became a place where students could test new ideas against established techniques. Sometimes tradition won. Sometimes innovation prevailed. Most often, the best results came from combining both approaches. Katie kept a small piece of the original broken staff on her desk as a reminder, not of failure or destruction, but of the moment when two different ways of thinking about military service came together to create something stronger than either could achieve alone. Sometimes the most important lessons came from breaking things that everyone thought were unbreakable. Sometimes the best way to honor tradition was to make it strong enough to survive in a changing galaxy. And sometimes a human and an alien could teach each other that respect and effectiveness were not opposites, but partners in the endless work of keeping good people alive in a universe full of challenges. The Academy continued to train warriors from across the galaxy, but now they learned more than just how to fight with honor. They learned how to. Word spread quickly through the Academy about the challenge. By sunset, every student and instructor had gathered around the circle of correction. Katie had never seen the entire Academy population in one place before. There were hundreds of aliens from dozens of different species, all standing in perfect silence around the ancient combat ring. The circle itself was carved into the stone floor of a large courtyard. Symbols and runes covered every inch of the carved border. At the center, two warriors would face each other under the light of Serenity Prime's 3 setting suns. Katie arrived wearing her standard Academy uniform. She had considered wearing something more protective, but the rules said that challenges had to be fought in normal clothes. She also had no weapons except for her hands, which was probably for the best. Vexthul was already waiting in the center of the circle. He wore a ceremonial version of his uniform covered in medals and ribbons. His staff gleamed in the golden light of the 3 suns. He looked like a figure from an ancient painting, noble and dignified and completely sure of his purpose. "Approach," he called out formally. Katie walked to the center of the circle. The watching crowd was completely silent. She could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching her every move. Some looked curious. Others looked disapproving. All of them looked like they expected her to lose badly. "Do you understand the rules of this combat?" Vexthul asked. "Not really. Nobody explained them to me." A ripple of shock went through the crowd. Apparently, everyone was supposed to know the rules of ancient combat traditions. "The rules are simple," Vexthul said. "We fight until one of us yields or is unable to continue. No weapons except for the staff I carry, which represents the authority of this academy. Victory proves the superiority of the winner's philosophy. What if I don't want to hurt you? Your concern is noted, but unnecessary. Proper technique prevents serious injury." Katie looked around at the watching crowd. "And if I lose?" When you lose, you will accept proper discipline and stop questioning the methods that have served the galaxy for centuries. And if you lose? Vexathul smiled for the first time since Katie had met him. That will not happen. No student has ever defeated an instructor in the circle of correction. Katie nodded. Okay, let's get this over with. Vexthul stepped back and raised his staff into a formal combat position. The wood gleamed with metal inlays and ceremonial decorations. He moved with the fluid grace of someone who had practiced the same techniques for decades. Begin, announced an elderly instructor from the edge of the circle. Vexthul moved forward with measured steps. His staff spun in complex patterns designed to intimidate and confuse opponents. Katie had to admit that it looked impressive. The spinning wood created a barrier of motion between them, while Vexthul advanced with perfect balance and form. Katie waited. She had learned in the Marines that the best way to deal with fancy fighting techniques was to let the other person get tired showing off. You are not defending yourself, Vexthul observed as he continued his approach. I'm waiting to see what you're going to do. I am demonstrating proper combat form. You should be attempting to counter my techniques. I don't know your techniques. I figured I'd let you show me first. This seemed to confuse Vexthul. He paused his advance and adjusted his grip on the staff. Combat is not a learning exercise. You should be fighting back. Okay. How do you want me to fight back? However, your training has taught you. Katie thought about this. Her training had taught her to end fights as quickly as possible using whatever methods worked best. But she suspected that was not what Vexthul wanted to hear. My training emphasized adapting to the situation, she said. Then adapt to this situation. Vexathul resumed his advance. The staff spun faster now, creating a whirring sound as it cut through the air. When he got close enough, he made his first attack. It was a careful, controlled strike aimed at Katie's shoulder. The blow was designed to demonstrate superior technique rather than cause serious harm. Katie could see it coming from several seconds away. She stepped to the side and let the staff pass harmlessly by her. You must attempt to block or counter my attacks, Vexthul said. Simply avoiding them teaches you nothing. It teaches me not to get hit. It shows a lack of engagement with proper combat principles. Vexthul tried again. This time he aimed for Katie's other shoulder with the same careful, measured technique. Katie stepped away again. This is not how combat instruction works, Vexthul said, sounding frustrated. You must engage with my techniques so that I can demonstrate their superiority. Why would I let you hit me to prove your techniques work? Because that is how you learn proper respect for superior skill. Katie was starting to understand the problem. You want me to fight back, but only in ways that let you win? I want you to fight back using proper form so that I can correct your errors. What if I don't have proper form? Then you will learn it by losing to someone who does. Katie looked around at the watching crowd. They all seemed to think this made perfect sense. Fight back, but only in ways that guaranteed you would lose. Learn by being defeated. Gain skill by accepting that you had no skill. That seems like a weird way to run a combat school, she said. Vexthul's grip on his staff tightened. Are you going to fight, or are you going to continue making observations about our methods? I guess I'll fight. Katie stepped forward. Vexthul raised his staff to block whatever attack he expected, but Katie did not attack. Instead, she reached out and grabbed the staff with both hands. This was apparently not something that was supposed to happen. Vexthul tried to pull the staff away, but Katie's grip was stronger. He tried to spin the staff to break her hold, but Katie just moved with it. "What are you doing?" Vexthul demanded, fighting back. "This is not proper combat technique. You said to adapt to the situation. The situation is that you have a weapon and I don't, so I'm adapting by taking your weapon away. You cannot simply grab an opponent's weapon. There are rules about proper engagement." "What rules?" Vexthul tried to explain the rules while still holding on to his staff. Katie listened politely while maintaining her grip on the ceremonial weapon. The rules were long and complicated and seemed designed to make sure that fights lasted a long time and looked impressive. "Those are interesting rules," Katie said when he finished, "but I don't think they apply to real combat." "This is real combat." "No, this is a demonstration with rules designed to make you look good. Real combat is about winning as quickly as possible with minimum risk to yourself." Katie applied a basic disarming technique she had learned in her first week of Marine training. It was a simple move that used leverage and surprise to remove weapons from opponents. She had practiced it hundreds of times on Earth. What she had not practiced was using it on a weapon that was held together with decorative metal bands instead of being carved from a single piece of wood. The ancient staff snapped in half with a sharp crack that echoed across the silent courtyard. Katie found herself holding two pieces of beautiful carved wood while Vexthul stared at the broken remains of 3 centuries of military tradition. "Oh," Katie said quietly, "that wasn't supposed to happen." The watching crowd was completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Everyone stared at the broken staff like they were watching a natural disaster unfold. Vexthul looked down at the piece he still held. It was just a fragment now, carved wood with broken metal bands hanging from it. The other half was in Katie's hands, looking sad and incomplete. "You broke it," he said in a voice barely above a whisper. "I'm really sorry. I didn't know it would break so easily. I was just trying to disarm you." "You broke the staff of authority. You destroyed 300 years of military tradition." Katie looked at the pieces of wood in her hands. Up close, she could see that the staff had been beautiful. The carving was intricate and obviously done by a master craftsman. The metal bands were decorated with tiny symbols that probably had important meanings. "Maybe it can be fixed?" she suggested. "Fixed?" Vexthul's voice was getting louder. "You think centuries of tradition can be fixed? Well, the wood could probably be glued back together. The metal bands might need to be replaced, but a good metalworker could probably... You broke the unbreakable symbol of this academy's authority." "It wasn't really unbreakable, though. I mean, it broke pretty easily once I put pressure on the right spot." The crowd was starting to murmur now. Katie could not understand what they were saying, but it did not sound happy. "The staff of authority has never been broken," Vexthul said. "It has survived battles with the greatest warriors in the galaxy. It has been carried through wars and conflicts that shaped civilizations. Maybe those warriors were just more careful with it." "More careful? More careful?" Vexthul was starting to sound like he might be having some kind of breakdown. Katie was beginning to realize that breaking the staff was a bigger deal than she had thought. "Look, I'll pay for repairs, or replacement, whatever it costs. I really didn't mean to break your ceremonial thing." "Ceremonial thing? Ceremonial thing? Your ceremonial staff? I know it was important to you." Vexthul sat down heavily on the stone floor of the circle. He was still holding his piece of the broken staff, staring at it like he could not believe what he was seeing. The intensive training, Vexthul promised, turned out to be more of the same, just with longer hours and more repetition. Katie woke up earlier, did more exercises, attended more classes, and spent more time in combat training. The only difference was that now Vexthul watched her constantly, looking for any excuse to assign more punishment exercises. Katie tried to adapt. She moved more slowly during exercises so she would not finish too quickly. She asked fewer questions in academic classes. She practiced combat techniques by herself to avoid accidentally hurting other students, but every attempt to fit in seemed to make things worse. "You are holding back," Vexthul said during one combat session. "This shows a lack of commitment to excellence." "I'm trying not to hurt anyone," Katie replied. "Proper technique cannot cause injury. If you are worried about hurting your training partners, your technique must be flawed." "My technique isn't flawed. I'm just stronger than everyone else here. Strength without discipline is chaos. Strength without proper form is worthless." Katie wanted to point out that strength with proper form was usually called victory, but she kept quiet. She was learning that Vexthul did not appreciate her observations about military tactics. The real problem came during a strategy class. The instructor was teaching about formation fighting and honor codes in battle. Katie listened politely until the instructor started explaining why certain tactics were forbidden. "A warrior never attacks from behind," the instructor said. "A warrior never uses concealment or deception. A warrior never strikes without warning. These principles separate civilization from barbarism." Katie raised her hand. "What if following those principles gets your soldiers killed?" The classroom went quiet. The instructor looked surprised by the question. "Proper warriors do not die from following correct principles," the instructor said. "If a warrior dies in honorable combat, that death has meaning and purpose. But what if you could save those warriors by using different tactics? What if you could win the battle without anyone dying?" Victory without honor is meaningless. Dead heroes are also meaningless. They can't protect anyone if they're gone. Several students made shocked noises. The instructor looked like Katie had said something disgusting. "Explain yourself," the instructor demanded. Katie thought about how to phrase her answer. "On Earth, we learned that the most important thing in combat is completing the mission and bringing your people home alive. Honor is nice, but it doesn't help much if everyone is dead. So humans have no concept of honorable warfare. We have concepts of effective warfare. Sometimes those are the same thing. Sometimes they're not." The instructor turned to write something on the board. Katie could not read the symbols, but she guessed it was not complimentary. "Human military doctrine emphasizes survival over honor," the instructor said. "This explains much about your species' aggressive reputation. Our aggressive reputation comes from winning fights against things that wanted to kill us. And this is how you justify attacking without warning? Fighting from concealment? Using deception in combat?" Katie was getting tired of being talked about like she was not in the room. Those aren't justifications. They're tools. You use whatever tools work best for the situation. Even if those tools are dishonorable, honor doesn't mean much if you're too dead to practice it. The instructor made more notes. Katie could tell that this conversation was not going well, but she could not stop herself from defending human military thinking. "Let me give you an example," she said. "Say you have a squad of 10 soldiers. You need to take a position held by 20 enemies. You can attack straight ahead with honor and lose half your squad, or you can use stealth and tactics to take the position without losing anyone. Which choice shows more respect for the lives of your soldiers?" "The honorable choice always shows more respect. Even if it gets more people killed, death in honorable combat is preferable to victory through dishonorable means." Katie stared at the instructor. That's insane. The entire classroom gasped. Several students stood up like they were going to leave. The instructor's face changed. Colors. What did you say? The instructor asked quietly. Katie realized she had crossed a line, but she was too committed to back down now. I said that's insane. You're telling me that you would rather watch good soldiers die than use effective tactics to save them. That's not honor. That's waste. You will report to Commander Vex Thule immediately, the instructor said. Class is dismissed. Katie gathered her things and left the classroom. She could feel every student watching her go. Some looked angry. Others looked curious. A few looked frightened. She found Vex Thule in the combat training area, practicing forms with his ceremonial staff. He moved with precise grace, spinning the staff in complex patterns. Katie had to admit that he was skilled and impressive to watch. You wish to see me? She said. Vex Thule stopped his practice and turned to face her. I have received multiple reports about your behavior today. You questioned military doctrine. You insulted an instructor. You disrupted an academic session. I asked questions about tactics that don't make sense. I expressed an opinion about military priorities. I participated in a discussion. You showed disrespect for centuries of military wisdom. You demonstrated contempt for the values this academy represents. Katie felt her temper rising again. I showed concern for the lives of soldiers. I demonstrated practical thinking about combat effectiveness. You think our methods are inadequate? I think some of your methods would get people killed unnecessarily. Vex Thule stepped closer. You think human methods are superior to galactic military doctrine? I think human methods focus on what works instead of what looks good. And you think you could do better than instructors who have trained warriors for centuries? In some situations, yeah, probably. Vex Thule's grip on his staff tightened until his knuckles turned white again. You are arrogant and disrespectful. You have no appreciation for tradition or proper military bearing. You think your crude survival instincts make you superior to trained professionals? I think my training focused on staying alive and completing missions instead of dying prettily. Then perhaps it is time for you to prove this superiority you claim. Katie felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? Vex Thule raised his staff and held it horizontally in front of his chest. I invoke the ancient right of instruction through combat. You will face me in the circle of correction to determine whether human methods or galactic discipline is truly superior. Katie had heard about this tradition during orientation. It was an old way of settling disputes between students and instructors. No one had used it in decades because no student had ever been foolish enough to challenge an instructor's authority so directly. You want to fight me? Katie asked. I want to teach you proper respect for military tradition. The circle of correction will provide that lesson. Look, I don't want to fight you. I'm not trying to disrespect anyone. I just think there might be better ways to do some things. Better ways? Vex Thule spun his staff in a circle above his head. This staff has been carried by 43 instructors before me. It has never been successfully challenged by any student. It represents the unbroken chain of military excellence that built galactic civilization. It's a stick. Vex Thule stopped spinning the staff. What did you say? Katie realized she had said the wrong thing again, but it was too late now. I said it's a stick. A nice stick, obviously. Historic and symbolic and all that, but it's still just a piece of wood. This staff is carved from the heartwood of Catheria's most sacred tree. It is reinforced with ceremonial metals blessed by our greatest warriors. It has channeled the authority of this academy for 300 years. Okay, it's a really important stick. Vexthul's large eyes went completely black. You will meet me in the Circle of Correction at sunset. The entire Academy will witness your instruction in proper respect. I really don't think this is necessary. It is completely necessary. You have questioned everything we stand for. You have insulted our methods, our traditions, and our values. Combat will settle this dispute once and for all. Katie looked at the staff in Vexthul's hands. It was beautiful and obviously well made. She could see the metal bands around it, and the careful carving in the wood. It looked ancient and important. She also noticed that it was held together with metal bands, which suggested that the wood might be brittle. The ceremonial metals looked decorative rather than functional. The whole thing was probably heavier than it needed to be and not designed for actual combat. "All right," she said. "If that's what it takes to settle this, I'll meet you at sunset." Vexthul nodded formally. "Prepare yourself, human. You are about to learn why galactic military tradition has endured for centuries." Katie nodded back. "I guess we'll see." As she walked away, Katie wondered if she should try to lose the fight on purpose. It might be easier to just let Vexthul win and move on with her training. But something about the way he had dismissed human military thinking made her stubborn. Maybe it was time for the galaxy to learn something new about Earth's children. Besides, it really was just a stick. Katie's first morning at the academy started badly and got worse from there. She woke up at what felt like dawn and went for a run around the campus. It seemed like a normal thing to do. Back on Earth, soldiers ran every morning. Exercise was how you started the day. Apparently, this was not normal here. When she got back to her room, sweaty and breathing hard, she found Vexthul waiting for her. He was standing perfectly straight, holding his ceremonial staff. His large black eyes looked angry. "Explain yourself," he said. Katie wiped sweat from her forehead. "I went for a run. Is that against the rules, too?" Students do not engage in unauthorized physical activity. Exercise happens during scheduled times under proper supervision. You could have injured yourself. You could have damaged academy property. You could have disturbed other students who were still sleeping. I ran on a path around some grass. I didn't break anything. You disturbed the peace of the academy. You acted without permission. This shows a lack of discipline and respect for authority. Katie wanted to point out that running was actually the most disciplined thing a person could do. Instead, she said, "Sorry, I didn't know." Ignorance is not an excuse. You will report to the punishment yard after morning meal. You will perform corrective exercises until I am satisfied that you understand the importance of following orders. The punishment yard turned out to be a flat area behind the main building. Other students were there doing various exercises. Katie watched a blue alien slowly lifting small weights. A rock creature was carefully moving through what looked like Tai Chi. Everyone moved like they were underwater. You will perform standard punishment exercises, Vexthul announced. 50 repetitions of each movement. Begin with basic calisthenics. Katie looked around. What's a basic calisthenic here? Vexthul showed her. The exercises were simple. Modified push-ups done slowly. Gentle stretching, light jumping, things that would barely count as a warm-up on Earth. How many did you say? Katie asked. 50 of each exercise? Katie shrugged and started. She finished all 50 exercises in about 10 minutes. The other students stopped what they were doing to watch. Some of them looked impressed. Others looked worried. Vexthul stared at her. You are supposed to be tired. From that? Not really. Do you want me to do more? The punishment exercises are designed to be exhausting. They are meant to teach humility and respect through physical hardship. Oh. Well, they're not really hard. Do you have anything more challenging? Vexthul's grip on his staff tightened. Katie was starting to notice that he did that when he was frustrated. More challenging? You think our military training is too easy? I think your punishment training is too easy. Maybe your regular training is harder. It was not harder. Katie discovered this during her first combat training session that afternoon. The instructor was a different alien, one that looked like a giant praying mantis. His name was something Katie could not pronounce, so she just called him Sir, like everyone else. Today we practice basic defensive positions, the instructor announced. Pair up and attempt to move your partner from their chosen stance. Katie was paired with another student named Zaketh. He was one of the four-armed blue aliens. He took a fighting stance that looked like something from a martial arts movie. All perfect balance and flowing movements. Begin, the instructor said. Zaketh moved toward Katie slowly and carefully. His four arms moved in complex patterns. Katie could see that he was skilled and graceful. He was also extremely gentle. When he tried to push her off balance, it felt like being nudged by a child. Katie did not move. Zaketh tried harder. He put more effort into his technique. He used all four arms in coordination. Katie still did not move. Perhaps you could try. To resist my attacks, Zaketh said politely. I am resisting. You're just not pushing very hard. I am using standard combat force. More than this would be dangerous. Dangerous how? Before Zaketh could answer, the instructor called for them to switch roles. Now Katie was supposed to try to move Zaketh from his position. Katie reached out and gave him a gentle push with one hand. Zaketh flew backward 3 feet and landed hard on the ground. The entire training area went quiet. Are you okay? Katie asked, running over to help him up. Zaketh was breathing hard and looked stunned. What did you do to me? I just pushed you. Barely even tried. The instructor came over quickly. What happened here? I think I pushed too hard, Katie said. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. The instructor looked from Katie to Zaketh, who was still sitting on the ground looking confused. Show me exactly what you did. I'd rather not. I don't want to hurt anyone else. This is a combat training exercise. You cannot hurt anyone with proper technique. Katie sighed. She reached out and very gently pushed the instructor with one finger. He staggered backward several steps. Impossible, he said. What kind of gravity does your world have? Normal gravity. Earth gravity. What is normal for you? Katie tried to remember the exact number. About 9.8 meters per second squared. The instructor and several students made sounds that Katie guessed were expressions of shock or horror. That is 3 times standard galactic gravity, the instructor said. Your bone density must be incredible. Your muscle mass must be enormous. Not really. I'm actually pretty average for a human. This information did not seem to make anyone feel better. The rest of combat training was awkward. Katie was not allowed to spar with anyone else. Instead, she had to practice movements by herself while the other students worked in pairs. She felt like she was in timeout. After training, Katie went to find Vexthul. She found him in his office, which was decorated with more statues and symbols. He was sitting behind a large desk, writing something on a tablet. I think we need to talk, Katie said. Vexthul looked up. You think? Students do not think about what they need. Students follow orders and accept instruction. Look, I'm trying to follow your rules. but I think there might be some things you don't understand about humans. I understand that humans are undisciplined and disrespectful. Today's events have confirmed this. I hurt someone today because I didn't know my own strength compared to everyone else here. That's not undisciplined. That's just different. Vexthul stood up and picked up his staff. Different is not acceptable in a military environment. Different gets people killed. Different breaks down unit cohesion and chain of command. Different also wins wars, Katie said. Every military breakthrough in human history came from someone doing something different. Your species has a history of warfare. This is not something to be proud of. Our species has a history of survival. We fought each other because we ran out of other things to fight. Do you know what else lives on Earth? Vexthul did not answer. Bears that weigh 800 pounds and can run 40 miles per hour. Cats that hunt in packs and can jump 20 feet. Spiders whose venom can kill you in minutes. Snakes that can swallow prey larger than themselves. And that's just the land animals. This is irrelevant. It's completely relevant. You're trying to teach discipline to someone whose ancestors had to outthink, outfight, or outrun something that wanted to eat them every single day for millions of years. We didn't develop discipline because it was traditional. We developed it because anything less got you killed. Vexthul walked around his desk to stand in front of Katie. You think you know more about military discipline than instructors who have trained warriors for centuries? I think I know more about staying alive than people who evolved on a planet where the biggest threat is stubbing your toe on a flower. The alien's large eyes narrowed. You will show proper respect for this institution and its traditions, or you will be removed from this academy. I am showing respect. I'm trying to learn your ways. But respect goes both ways. You can't just assume that everything different is wrong. Vexthul raised his staff and pointed it at Katie. This staff represents 3 centuries of military tradition. It has been carried by dozens of instructors who shaped some of the galaxy's greatest warriors. It symbolizes the authority and wisdom of this academy. Katie looked at the staff. It was beautiful and obviously very old. She could see why it was important to him. I respect your traditions, she said, but maybe your traditions could learn something from mine too. Human traditions are barely 50,000 years old. Galactic military doctrine has existed for 10 times longer. Age doesn't always mean wisdom. Sometimes it just means you've been doing the wrong thing for a really long time. Vexthul's grip on the staff became so tight that his knuckles turned white. Katie could see that she had pushed too far. But she could not take the words back now. We will see how long your human arrogance lasts, he said quietly. Tomorrow we begin intensive training. We will see if your species is as tough as you claim. The transport ship landed on Serenity Prime with a soft hiss of escaping air. Katie Morgan stepped out and looked around at the most beautiful place she had ever seen. Green grass stretched as far as she could see. Purple flowers bloomed everywhere. 3 suns hung in the sky like golden coins. The air smelled like honey and rain. This is supposed to be a military academy, Katie said to herself. She picked up her single bag and walked toward the massive building in the distance. Back on Earth, military bases looked like concrete boxes. This place looked like a fairy tale castle. Other students were arriving, too. Katie saw a tall blue alien with 4 arms carrying 7 bags. Another student looked like a walking pile of rocks. A third one had gills and was wearing some kind of water suit. They all moved carefully and slowly. They treated every step like it might hurt them. Katie walked past them all. Her boots made loud sounds on the stone path. The other students turned to stare. Katie did not care. She had learned long ago that staring was just curiosity. On Earth, you worried about things that could kill you. Everything else was just noise. The Academy building was huge. Katie had seen big buildings before, but this one was different. It was old in a way that made her feel small. The walls were covered in symbols she could not read. Statues of alien warriors lined the entrance. Some held weapons. Others held books. All of them looked serious and important. "You must be the human," a voice said behind her. Katie turned around. The speaker was tall and thin with gray skin and large black eyes. He wore a uniform covered in medals and ribbons. In his hands he held a long staff made of dark wood. The staff had metal, bands around it and symbols carved into every inch. "I am Commander Vexithul," the alien said. "I will be your instructor during your time here." Katie held out her hand. "Katie Morgan, good to meet you." Vexithul looked at her hand like it might bite him. After a long moment, he touched it briefly with one finger. His skin felt cold and dry. "Human customs are different," he said. "You will learn our ways here. The Galactic Council has honored us by sending you to our academy. We have trained warriors from 43 different worlds. We have never failed to turn a student into a proper soldier." Katie nodded. She had heard this speech before. Every drill sergeant in every military had the same speech. The words were different, but the meaning was the same. "We will break you down and build you back up." "Follow me," Vexthul said. "I will show you to your quarters." They walked through halls filled with more statues and paintings. Everything was clean and perfect. Nothing was out of place. Katie noticed that other students walked in straight lines. They did not touch anything. They spoke in whispers. "The academy has rules," Vexthul explained as they walked. "Students rise at the 5th hour. Morning exercises begin at the 6th hour. Academic lessons start at the 8th hour. Combat training begins at the 12th hour. Evening meal is at the 16th hour. Sleep begins at the 20th hour. These rules have not changed in 300 years. Katie did some quick math in her head. The days here were longer than Earth days. The schedule was actually pretty relaxed compared to Marine boot camp. She had done worse with less sleep and more work. "Sounds good," she said. Vexthul stopped walking. "Sounds good? That is your response to centuries of military tradition?" "Well, yeah. It's a schedule. Not a bad one either. Back home, we sometimes went 3 days without sleep during training. This looks pretty comfortable." The alien's large eyes got even larger. "Comfortable? This is not supposed to be comfortable. This is supposed to be challenging, character building, discipline forming." Katie shrugged. "If you say so." They reached a door marked with symbols Katie could not read. Vexthul touched the door and it slid open. Inside was a small room with a bed, a desk, and a window. Everything was neat and clean. It reminded Katie of a hotel room. "This is your quarters," Vexthul said. "You will keep it exactly as you found it. Every item has a place. Every place has a purpose. Disorder is not tolerated." Katie dropped her bag on the bed. It made a loud thump. Vexthul winced. "Where should I put my stuff?" Katie asked. "Your belongings go in the storage unit," Vexthul said. He pointed to a metal box built into the wall. "Clothes are folded according to regulation. Personal items are limited to 3 objects of no more than 10 centimeters in any dimension." Katie opened her bag and started pulling things out. She had packed light, a few changes of clothes, a photo of her family. A small knife her grandfather had given her. Some basic toiletries. A book about military history. Vex Thul watched her with growing alarm. "What is that?" He pointed at the knife. "It's just a pocket knife. My grandfather carried it in 3 wars. He gave it to me when I joined the Marines. Weapons are not allowed in student quarters." Katie looked at the knife. It was small and old. The blade was maybe 3 inches long. "This isn't really a weapon. It's more like a tool. I use it to open packages and stuff." All cutting implements are considered weapons in this academy. Katie sighed and put the knife back in her bag. "Okay, where can I keep it?" "Nowhere. It will be confiscated and returned to you when you leave." That seems a little extreme for a pocket knife. Vex Thul's grip tightened on his staff. "Rules are not suggestions, human. They are absolutes. Your species may not understand discipline, but you will learn it here." Katie felt her temper start to rise. She had been called worse things by better people, but something about the way he said "your species" rubbed her the wrong way. My species fought its way to the top of a food chain full of things trying to eat us, she said. "We know plenty about discipline. We just don't confuse it with following stupid rules." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Vex Thul drew himself up to his full height. "Stupid rules? These traditions have kept peace in the galaxy for centuries. They have produced some of the finest warriors ever known. Species from across the stars send their best and brightest here to learn proper military conduct. And now they sent me," Katie said. "So either Earth's military is better than you thought, or you're about to learn something new." Vex Thul stared at her for a long moment. Katie could see him trying to decide if she was being disrespectful or just honest. She was being both, but she did not think he needed to know that. "Dinner is in 1 hour," he said finally. "Do not be late. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not touch anything unnecessarily." He turned and walked out. The door slid shut behind him with a soft hiss. Katie sat down on the bed and looked around her new home. It was going to be a long few months. She could already tell that Commander Vex Thul thought humans were barbarians who needed to be civilized. He was probably right about the barbarian part, but Katie had a feeling that his idea of civilization and her idea of survival were going to clash in some interesting ways. She put her clothes in the storage unit and placed the photo of her family on the desk. The book went on the small shelf. Everything else went back in her bag. She would figure out what to do with the knife later. Outside her window, she could see other students walking across the campus. They all moved with the same careful precision, the same measured steps, the same perfect posture. Katie smiled. This was going to be fun.